Fantastic, Pelham. Thanks for having me.
Yes, no, nice to see you again. It's a bit of a different change from the West Coast. I saw you last in Los Angeles virtually. Now
Yep,
you're on the East Coast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and it's much safer than flying these days. So I appreciate the virtual format. This is great.
Fantastic. Well, today you're going to talk to us about how to securely mine your data warehouse and data lake. Brian, you're free to share your screen. You have the floor.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Pelham. So good morning, everyone. I'm Brian Stoner, and I'm the Vice President of Channels and Alliances at Altr. And what I'm going to talk about today is really a new business opportunity for all of you. I've been in the managed services business for over 20 years. I started off working for carriers. Then I kind of got into the security business about 15 years ago. Sold basically every type of security product that you could possibly imagine. And today I think there is a very strategic opportunity because most managed services providers really focus at the network or the endpoint. Some, application security, but mostly things like HIPs and things like that. But when you think about security and you think about the challenges that your customers are facing, obviously, even Eric talked about, phishing and the need to train employees to look for those types of attacks. The attackers are looking for credentials. And if they can get credentials, they can get into the application and they can see everything that those users' credentials allow them to see. Because we've been securing data the same way for so long, using things like encryption, it's unfortunate, but once the attacker can get in there and see those records, they can screen scrape, they can use those credentials to, if they, get the DBA's credentials, they can actually go steal, entire databases. And that's where you see things in the news where, somebody on the dark web has released a bunch of identities. And so that's kind of how that happens. I think, the new move from housing that data in their data centers or in a hosted data center with much different levels of security to moving it to the cloud presents a big opportunity. And so when you think about what's happening in this particular trend, you've got customers that have a lot of applications that were really siloed and had their own separate databases that weren't really connected. And so, the art of finding a strategic advantage in those applications really came down to, the CEO and the business, owners, right? But today, if you can unlock that data and push it into, a data lake or a data warehouse where you can begin to group the data from different applications to look for trends, think about the ability to, if you're a grocery store, tie your hand sanitizer and toilet paper sales to the COVID trends in an area. And how can you influence your projections to make sure that you're not out of stock on those sorts of items? You can push all that data into a data warehouse or a data lake, and you can use business intelligence tools to mine that data, right? So that's why we're seeing explosive growth in this market. And it's a great way as a managed services provider to get into an area that's really important to your customers and that really doesn't have a lot of native security built into it other than the cloud platforms themselves. And so again, if somebody could get credentials into that cloud, they could get access to all of that customer's data. So I think the other thing is that obviously these used to be expensive, big storage area networks from EMC and large manufacturers like that. Today you can buy this space in the cloud, so to speak, for pennies. Right now there's also a number of different vendors, and it's also kind of complex and confusing. For me as a managed services provider, I always saw those as a great opportunity. So it's not really just my opinion. IDC and Gartner and Forrester all see this trend of customers putting more and more data into the cloud. So it's just massive amounts of data. I don't know if you guys know what a zettabyte is, but I think it's way bigger than a gig, which is, you know, really big when I try to download it on my iPad. But you know, a lot of this is also exploding because of the introduction of IoT devices and all of the different things that can be taken from even your mobile device, knowingly or unknowingly. Obviously, if you've read anything about the TikTok capabilities, or even, you know, Facebook. Facebook can take just about anything from your phone if you let them. So again, the inexpensive nature of the storage is driving businesses to store more and more information. And they're using artificial intelligence and machine learning to begin to understand that data better. And you know, I know you hear a lot about this when we talk about, you know, cyber threat intelligence and things like that. But here, what I'm talking about is a customer being able to put those massive amounts of data into the cloud. And in the grocery store example, being able to have the artificial intelligence and machine learning provide suggested stocking, you know, for different stores based on the trends, and being able to do it in a better way than they could when it was just, you know, their purchasers in their purchasing department making educated guesses, right? So all of these things are driving massive amounts of storage, even for smaller businesses. So when we think about this data lake market, there's going to be a number of different tools that you're going to need in your portfolio to support your go-to-market for this. The first one is going to be some sort of data discovery tool. 9 times out of 10, when you have a conversation with a customer about, well, you know, you're moving data into the data lake, you know, what data are you moving there? You know, how much of it do you have? And they're going to have a hard time answering a lot of those questions. If you have an easy to use data discovery tool, and I'll name a few in the next couple slides here, that'll help you kick off the conversation and kind of do an assessment for them. From there, they'll need a cloud service to put, you know, the data into. There are tools called ETL tools that actually help with the staging and moving of the data from, you know, their current source into that cloud service. And once all of that data is, you know, in that cloud service, you need business intelligence tools to do the analysis work. And I'll share what some of those are. And then on top of that, obviously you need to, you know, help them understand security in that cloud environment and how you can, you know, best secure this, because we're talking about their crown jewels. We're talking about their data. The different data lake providers that are most popular today are Amazon Redshift, Google Cloud, and Microsoft Azure. But really, I think the fastest growing provider is one called Snowflake. And what Snowflake does is it actually creates a really easy interface into all of these other cloud providers through the Snowflake service. So instead of having to, you know, set up Amazon Redshift, you know, in California, New York, and London, you can buy Snowflake and they handle all of that on the back end. You can still designate which storage provider you want, but they make it very easy to push the data into the right regions. And for things like GDPR, keep it in those regions. The other thing is that, you know, compared to things like Splunk and other tools, Snowflake is extremely inexpensive. And I would argue that you can probably get your Redshift storage cheaper through the Snowflake service than you could just setting up your own, you know, Amazon Redshift. So I think it's just good to kind of understand the players in the marketplace. You know, from the perspective of, you know, Altr, you know, we're looking at, well, who are the partners that we need to engage with in these different areas, so that as a manufacturer, we can provide that data level security that's kind of our core competency. So again, you know, the data discovery tool that we've kind of started to work with is OneTrust. They do a really nice job of being able to, point the tool at the different data sources. They'll categorize it. They can group it by different compliance requirements. And from there, we can, create policy within the Altr tools to protect that data. The different BI tools that a lot of customers use are things like Tableau. Definitely, one of the oldest and most established, but there are new upstarts like Domo and Looker that are also very good and cloud-based, cloud-native. Some of the ETL tools that you might run into would be like Fivetran or SQL DBM, which just help you move that data into those cloud services. And as a proof point that there is, a business for managed services provider to get into this space, there are SI providers. Some of them are, AWS advanced providers like Nub8. Others are, larger consultants like Protiviti. RxA is a specialist in Domo. Woven Measure actually creates some really cool applications that can provide assessments and things that you could potentially use to share, with your customers to help them with their compliance requirements on an ongoing basis. And then there's other partners like Logan Britton that focus on, again, the cloud data lake and data warehouse architectures. So Altr has built a platform that does data security as a service. When all of this data was in a data center and in a protected environment, there were a lot of tools that customers used to protect that data. Traditional encryption, like Oracle, TDE, is very popular for Oracle-based applications. There might have been, Protegrity or IBM Guardium if you had a larger customer that was fairly sophisticated. But the challenge is that none of those tools were really built to work in the cloud. What we've done is we've abstracted a lot of that functionality into a cloud SaaS service, which is fully multi-tenant. So if you have a lot of customers, we can set this up in multiple customers. And in order to implement the tool, all you have to do is change a line of code in the driver, and it sends the data into our service. So it's really easy to implement, really lightweight. It does not impact performance. We're also a PCI DSS level 1 service provider. We meet all of the HIPAA requirements. We can help with CCPA and GDPR. We are also named one of the Gartner Cool Vendors this year. So just to give you kind of a high level of what the architecture looks like, again, on the client side, they'll have their applications. And that's where we kind of hook in at the driver or at an API level. And we begin to get that visibility into every time a user accesses data through the BI tool, we can give visibility into the SOC so that you know what's happening. Not only can we do that, but once we understand what's happening and create some baselines, then we can begin to create some governance policies. And these governance policies can actually control, the geolocation where the user can use the BI tool from, so that you can, restrict it to the United States and not have people coming in from China using BI tools on their Snowflake data lake. We can do things like controlling time of day, or even the amount of data that someone's consuming. Most regulations, once someone has stolen over 499 records, that becomes a notifiable breach. We can actually alert up until that point and begin blocking at 499 plus, unless somebody has specific credentials to be able to do that large of a search within the data lake. So it's a very simple platform to understand and learn. And then the other thing that we do is we share all of our data with Snowflake, so that if you're looking at their network telemetry or their encryption telemetry or even their identity telemetry, we can correlate all that back to the same event. So one of the big challenges if a customer does have a breach these days is that If it's a credential breach where they stole somebody's credentials into the application, the most of the time that's spent in the incident response work is trying to go through the network logs, the application logs, and then the database logs to figure out what that attacker potentially stole or saw when they were in the application. With Altr, we create records for every data access. So if you know the user's credentials that were stolen and the time range that that happened, we can provide immutable evidence of that access to that data without ever having to do search database logs or any of those other things. So it's a very simple, again, SaaS-based solution. Essentially what we're doing is we're extending kind of a zero trust strategy down to the application layer. So just like, you might have multi-factor authentication to get into, critical applications for administrators and things like that. We can kind of extend that into the actual data consumption layer of the application. So again, this can be extended once you help them understand how to secure their data lake and data warehouse. You can actually extend this into their production applications. This service can be used on every production application that one of your customers may use. And the same way that we can provide monitoring and governance of who's consuming data, we can do that in real time on their production applications with zero impact. So it could be a very powerful upsell for you to your existing customers that are very security conscious about specific business critical applications. And I did briefly mention GDPR and CCPA. One of the interesting things is that as CCPA has begun enforcing the regulation, a lot of customers are starting to realize that they were securing things like credit card numbers or social security numbers using encryption, or in the financial services space, a lot of the financial services, card processors and people like that have actually been using tokenization because it's more secure than encryption. But as they start learning about CCPA and GDPR, they understand that now there's other pieces of customer data that you have to secure. And if you're outsourcing, your credit card processing, you're assuming that they're securing all of that, PCI data. Now with CCPA, their, picture from their profile has to be protected. Their name and likeness has to be protected. Their username has to be protected. And none of the, current systems were really built to support that. So with Altr, if you deploy our, solution into their applications, you can actually go back and create a policy that says, I want to tokenize the profile image for that user, or their name, or their username, or their likeness. And you can begin to become even beyond compliant with the current regulation. And so there are a lot of customers that are really looking for getting to that place. And this is a very simple, lightweight, easy way to get there. And again, it's a SaaS-based platform. It's multi-tenant. We can connect into ConnectWise or whatever other tool that you're using for your ticketing systems and things, and it makes it very seamless. So just to kind of summarize, right? I think this is a great opportunity for all managed services providers to take advantage of this trend of moving data to the clouds and data warehouses and data lakes. The time to value on this is very fast because, again, it's all cloud-based. As soon as it's turned on, it's generating value. It's very simple to integrate. We have the drivers and the APIs. It's very simple configuration, very intuitive. And the other thing is if you choose to replace their encryption, we can usually provide the entire service for less than their renewal on their encryption products. And it also, if you're doing tokenization instead of encryption, gets rid of the need for key management. It's mapless, and it's very, very secure. So the other big advantage is that this is kind of a global, secure, unified security layer. Wherever their applications reside, whether it's on-prem, whether it's in a cloud, or whether it's in multiple clouds. Once our driver's installed, we can enforce these policies globally wherever that application resides. If it's microservices and it bursts up to handle extra load or retracts back down, we adjust with it as it does that. So it's a very modern, data architecture and way to provide security at the data layer for your customers. So, with that, I guess, Pelham, I will, go ahead and ask if there are any questions, if I can help anybody get started.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Brian. And I like you mentioned a few things such as zero trust, which we're going to be talking about a bit later. And you mentioned integration with ConnectWise, and of course we've got Drew Sanford coming up from ConnectWise later. So that's a nice segue. Someone seems to ask, are you Hugo Schmidt is asking, when you talk about data security as a service, does that basically mean CDR, and I'm assuming it means cloud detection response, as opposed to MDR? Is that where you're going with it?
Yeah, actually, this is a little bit deeper than detection and response, right? Because what we're doing is we're actually establishing policies that are enforced in real time. This is not an after the fact analysis and then trying to figure out what to do. We can help customers and partners provide a proactive response to data consumption in real time without having to do a lot of analysis on the back end.
Okay. No, I like that. It takes the hassle out. And what about working with MSPs as opposed to end users? Is there any difference in how Altr is applied through the channel and through direct to end users?
Well, so for managed services providers, right, they provide level 1 and level 2 support for us. So what we have to do is make sure that they can manage all of the different policies, understand the technology, implement it, tune it, and then run it, right? The end user at that point really doesn't need to know anything other than the fact that the managed service provider is running the policies. There are managed services providers that work with larger customers who may want administrative access to our console. And in that case, they can give access to their individual tenant and they can co-manage it. But then the partner really just needs to establish, are they going to do level 1 triage and then we'll do level 2 policy adjustment or clearing security alerts. So those are kind of the two scenarios that we see.
Okay, no, I like that. So what's next for you? What's next in Altr's development?
So we're in the process of integrating to a number of other partners, but we're actually creating a cloud gateway that we can connect any cloud service to any other cloud service and provide this level of visibility and governance between anything, essentially. So today we're kind of inside the application and enforcing there. But I think what we kind of see as the future is more of an API to API future. I don't think a lot of customers want multiple consoles to look at. I think they want the functionality provided via an API, especially managed services providers. You don't want to keep a sprawl of different products going. You really just want the functionality, right? So if we can provide the functionality elegantly in an API fashion, I think that's going to be the preferred model, going forward.
No, definitely, especially in this interesting environment of maybe consolidation. Every time people talk about MSP consolidation, it's never quite true in the same way that maybe MSS consolidate, but it's certainly an interesting environment to operate in. But no, this is fascinating, and as was your last talk on data lake security. It's really a pleasure to have you. We are sadly out of time now, but please. Thank you to Altr for supporting this event and many other events. It's great to have your support, and please give Brian a wonderful virtual round of applause.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, thank you. I will see you. I'll see you again very soon. Yeah, it's great to welcome you.
Thanks, Palm.
Perfect. Yes, Christopher's clapping. Haley's clapping. Oh, and found more icons. Fantastic. I've got to find them myself. It's a brave new world of virtual event clapping. Lisa's clapping. Mind you, I could just write clapping. That would be perfect. By the way, thank you. Lots of nice comments on LinkedIn and Twitter using the MSS Tri-State hashtag. Actually, I've seen some which haven't used that hashtag. That's fine. It's the only reason I like it is so we can kind of collate it and create a thread. Matthew Porcelli, figuring out how to clap, but still clapping, fantastic. Mike's clapping, Helen's clapping, Matthew's clapping. Okay, this is good, this is good. So James Green is clapping, very good, very good. We had a great presentation from Brian, thank you to Altr. Now we're going to move on and ask a related question to what Brian was just talking about. We want to know, well, what will the MSS of the future need to do to make sense of operational data and build resilience into their organization? And I guess we could shorthand that into, what is the MSS of the future? Some of the topics, as I just invite our panel up, could include, of course, the transition from an MSP to an MSS. I know sometimes the world of MSS doesn't like that, but that's fine. We need the debate, and sometimes it's another type. I can see Miles. Miles, how are you doing? I think
sorry for the delay. Mute. Great to be here. Thanks, Home.
Fantastic. And oh, there's JP. How are you doing, JP? I think you're mute at the moment.
I'm unmuted. How's it going? It's good to see you again.
Perfect. And Alan's there. Nice to see you. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yes, sunny England is very sunny. Nice to see you, Sanjana. All good in New York. That's a nice picture, Sanjana.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, I'm just counting everybody's here. Just to introduce everybody, we have Alan Alford, VP Delivery CISO at NTT Data Service.